Welcome to our daily touch points. Today is July 6th, and we're talking about Genesis chapter 44. And I hope that you've enjoyed reading the story in Genesis of Joseph and now the exchange between him and his brothers, because it's such a fascinating and interesting story. So here in Genesis 44, the story seems to have taken another turn, almost like if Joseph is now having a little bit of fun with his brothers, kind of knowing maybe how this story is going to play out, but we don't know as a reader. And certainly the brothers don't know. So Joseph hides this piece of silver in the sack of Benjamin. And then he sends one of his aides out to meet the brothers as they're leaving town. And of course, they swear up and down that nothing has been taken from the palace. But sure enough, this silver cup is found in Benjamin's sack. And so all of the brothers then return back to the palace, because the last thing they need to happen is for them to return home and Benjamin is no longer with them. And so we have this exchange now. You know, Joseph says, no, only the one that was found to be caught stealing needs to stay as a slave. But of course, his brothers won't have anything of that. And I want to focus in here on the next couple of minutes here, is maybe just the arc of the story of Judah within the story of Joseph. In the book of Genesis here, Judah is kind of one of these predominant characters. In fact, he's the one that we know the most about in this whole story besides Joseph. We know that Judah was the one that came up with the idea of, hey, let's sell Joseph into slavery when he saw the traveling merchants come through. And he's the one that proposed that idea to the brothers, and the brothers all accepted. And then a few chapters ago, we saw that the story narrative takes a pause. The author of the story takes a pause and kind of dives into Judah's story a little bit. And we know that he lost two sons, and so he's gone through some personal sufferings, and he's gone through some personal things in this story, in the arc of this story. So we know a little bit about what's going on in Judah's life. And then we get to chapter 44, and I want to read the very last verse in chapter 44, or the very last couple of verses. In verse 33, Judah says to Joseph, "So please, my Lord, let me stay here as a slave instead of the boy, and let the boy return to his brothers." And in the last verse, in verse 34, it says, "For how can I return to my father if the boy is not with me? I couldn't bear to see the anguish that this would cause my father." And what I see here is that Judah has done a little bit of maturing in this story, a little bit of growing up. Maybe it's the challenges of life he's faced earlier. Maybe it's how he's seen his father kind of grieve and go into anguish over Joseph's loss. But whatever the factors are, we see that Judah is responding differently than he did in the past when they chose to sell Joseph into slavery. He's taking ownership. He's taking responsibility. He is humbling himself. He's saying, no, take me. And he's thinking of others before himself. We didn't see the same Judah earlier in the story. And what I was thinking about, and just want to share quickly, is sometimes difficult seasons, sometimes the challenges of life force us to mature. Judah has experienced the loss of two of his sons. He has seen how his father has dealt with the grief of the loss of a brother, and it's caused him to mature, to grow up a little bit. And now here we come to this portion of the story, and Judah is saying, no, I'm going to take the place of Benjamin. I'm going to take the place of the young boy, because he's thinking of others now. He's thinking of his father. He's thinking of Benjamin. He's thinking of others before himself. And that's what maturity does in the life of a believer. Sometimes we go through challenging moments, but it forces us to mature. We stop thinking less about ourselves, and in humility, we begin thinking more of others before ourselves. So in this story, we see that Judah has grown up a little bit, that he's caused some maturity, and maybe that has some influence in the way Joseph will then respond in the next chapter or two. Maybe. But what we do know for sure is that Judah's response now is a little different than it was in previous chapters. He's grown up a little bit. He's matured. And again, maybe you're going through a season of life where you don't know why you're going through a certain suffering, or you don't know why some things have happened to you, but maybe you do. Maybe you've seen yourself mature. Maybe you can look back at the arc of your own life and see how certain circumstances, certain sufferings have produced maturity in you as a believer. May God bless you as you continue reading His Word.